Jungle.
शरणागत वत्सल सारनिते परिपालय मां वृषशैलपदे अतिवेलतया तव दुर्विश
the relevance of that reference. So rather what you would want to know is, suppose you are looking at an ethnicity or a disease condition, a collection of reduce it to a single linear reference, but that collection becomes your reference. Why people are reducing? Because computation is enormously easy to deal with a single sequence as opposed to collection. Because when you have collection and hard problems that you have to deal with, and you don't want all those hardness in life. But this leads you to, newer about the population level data that is getting generated. Varieties of what should you look at a more richer reference model, and the pangenomes have been about pangenome references where you're not talking about just one genome, you might be talking about, let's say, 10,000 genomes as your reference. Wherever they agree, you stay, and wherever they disagree, they branch out, and where they agree, they come back, and then they branch out where they disagree. So all your references are encoded in a very compact structure, like a graph, and that becomes your reference for your reference analysis. Now the problem is, already if you have, the UK 1000 genome project, which has roughly about 2000 genomes, your graph that you're talking about, your reference structure has about 300 million vertices and edges. And that's the kind of data structure that you're dealing with in order to analyze a new sample. Now, enormous opportunity to develop the efficient algorithm where you have a richer reference. So you have a lesser, what is called as a reference bias. So you have a lesser chance of a reference bias. And the battery. A reference, which is a graph, which essentially is a representation of a collection of references. Maybe it's
Sivadasan, it was definitely questions.
There is such metabolic pathways and which interact with different types of cellular signaling molecules. When you have to do the computation of something, you have to ascertain certain value to a variable, right? So these variables, you can give a range, but actual situation within the in vivo conditions, those values are very difficult to predict. If I say blood glucose level is between 90 to 100 mg or deciliter, you know that, but you cannot expect that type of the amounts. It is very difficult within the dynamic situation, within the in vivo conditions. So how do you have a strategy to ascertain the values to these variables for which you don't have any control?
Is to look at what does the patient population look like. So there is quite a bit of work that is happening today on virtual patients or virtual patient population where you have range of values and whatever are meaningful combination that we are indicating for a human in this thing are the potential values that you can instantiate and run your circuit with. So we work a lot on that where we try to generate samples of what are the typical combination of values across various parameters, and that parameter combination are sampled from some underlying distribution, and it makes sense. Maybe we use things like quantitative QSP models. You run the analysis and see whether the simulation makes sense or not, and then from those you measure the observables and see whether those distribution make sense or are they in the desired range or not. This is perhaps the way in which many of the community groups are trying to do, because otherwise we really don't know. All that we have are certain